love, loss, and family. As we continue this episode, we venture yet into another important phase in my concrete jungle. Life is full of uncertainties. Life is full of the unpredictable. Life is so full of the unknown. It is better for me to trust in myself and my capabilities and my ability to handle the unknown than to deal with the familiar. Once you start to change your mind, then you start to change your life. Thinking back to that one time I had a different view to death and loss. Through my struggle in high school, I was blessed with failure. Mind you, at first, I'd seen this as a letback. Fast forward a few years later, I saw how important it was for me to have a different relationship with failure and loss. This determined who was there for me. As much as not having my father in my teenage life, my grandfather was a star in my growth. He was a retired teacher of over 30 years who was a well-respected man. He always referred to me as Mastangonyana and showed me how important it was to value my own knowledge. Seeing him at work amazed me, and there I was, recovering and making the best of my experiences. With time, everything will tell. The loss of a great warrior. My grandfather lived such an exemplary life, a dignified man. He taught me a lot about respect for the self as well as for others. He always reminded me to demand respect of myself and others too. That steered me towards a different viewpoint of life. He once said to me in the first week of me repeating grade 10, and I quote, "Are you going to sit here and come up with all the excuses that you can't do it? Or are you going to stand up for yourself and see what can happen? You're only a failure when you quit." Till this day, those words stuck to me. I could reflect on the negative moments we had, but it would send me down a road of misery. And my main objective here is to have the best of both. A teacher by profession of more than 30 years, he was a parent first, before a professional. Another valuable skill he taught me is how to be determined in carving out a path for the self, and that anything was possible, especially if I had belief in my own intellect as well as the intellect of others, while having fun with the process of learning. At the core of it all, we had to prepare for different times without him being there. He was getting old and his health was deteriorating. I lost a grandfather physically, but I gained an angel spiritually. Divided factions within the family as well as different views of facing the storm that was ahead of us. This period is when everyone started to drift further from one another. My grandfather was such a binding force, as a figure of the family. But now, time had to be prepared without him. Grateful to have such an amazing mentor and grandfather. Love and honor him. Everybody in the family was finding different means to deal with the pain, and no one was prepared to face things as a united force. All this released a lot of suppressed feelings towards everyone. Everyone was not coping, but no one wanted to admit they needed help, but instead of being vulnerable, they chose avoidance. Avoidance breeds chaos, and it was on the way. Avoidance breeds chaos, and it was on the way. it was all about survival. It was there and then I decided to see things as they were and not what I wanted it to be. This shifted me towards self-sustenance as well as self-care. I had to put value in myself by engaging in things that encouraged me to be a better individual and not fighting to survive, but instead create a life for myself. Probably the hardest decision I had to make. I just couldn't sit there and be miserable because the other people in the family were. Self-care taught me that I chose how to react to any situation I found myself in, whether that would be viewed as good or bad. Everyone literally chose to drive themselves down a rabbit hole, and that was their own fault. I decided for myself to lead by example and being the person that I am. In the midst of it all, I started paying attention to my thoughts and things that encourage positivity into my life. Being more focused on life made it possible not to have any discretion towards someone else, but instead my own. If I was focused on myself, then I don't have any opportunity to critique the other livelihood of another person, because I am focused on my own experience. Personal responsibility was my main goal. The only way you could teach others is by leading by example. My mother and the pain and tribulation she had went through as a single mother, catering for more than 6 kids, and also the courage it took to stand by her children, even after she had been through so much, was very detrimental. I take my hat off to her. In my early maturation stage, I had a very different and negative view towards my mother, but as I grew older and went through experiences, I started to understand why she had to make those sacrifices. In fact, you never know until it happens to you. My mother was such an amazing person. I regard her as an army general. She had been through a lot of battles, and that had taken a toll on her. Now, it was my personal responsibility to learn from her success as well as her failures, as she was strengthening herself. In fact, she was my hero. She's still my hero. Where many would have ditched and give up, instead, she had chosen to stay and fight. No excuses. Those were very teachable moments, important that things would be beneficial in the long run. As a young man and also as a parent, I had to learn from that. Learn as much as you can from other people's pain. It has a lot to teach you about yourself and what lies ahead of you. Nothing is guaranteed. Many thanks for tuning in for this episode to learn and reflect with me. Your feedback and reviews will be highly appreciated on all the podcast platforms you're listening on. Until next time, namaste.